This is Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. Ahead of us on this Thursday's program, we start with K-State College of Agriculture Dean Ernie Minton. He joins us for the month of October's edition of Statewide, where he highlights some of the latest from the college, including researchers earning a $2 million grant to support nitrogen-smart sorghum production and interesting consumer trends surrounding college football season. Also ahead, Director of the Office of Farm and Ranch Transition here at K-State, Ashlee Westerhold, joins us again to discuss the Kansas LandLink Program. We are also joined by Kansas producer Dale Springer, who is currently a participant in this program. We end today's program with K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Johnson County, Dennis Patton. For this week's horticulture segment, Dennis offers advice on taking care of houseplants this fall and winter. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We're back now with Dean Ernie Minton. He is the Dean of the College of Agriculture here at K-State for our monthly Statewide segment. And basically, Statewide is it's a collection of stories of the latest happenings that have been going on in the College of Agriculture here at K-State. So, Dean Minton, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm really excited to share some of these things with your listeners.
Absolutely. So, like I said, this is for the month of October, and kicking off the month, the first story you all wanted to share was just the support that we've gotten from industry in terms of supporting infrastructure here that we have coming in, hopefully, soon.
Yeah, Samantha, this is really, really exciting. K-State has a great opportunity. It's really a once in a lifetime, maybe once in a career, at least for me, opportunity to really renew some aging facilities, but more than that, to also energize and modernize and bring together multiple disciplines in new and innovative spaces. And so we had the opportunity to receive some state money and some of those funds up to $25 million, so a total of $50 million from the state. But to get 25 of that, we have to raise $75 million from private philanthropy. And so one of the articles in this edition of Statewide denotes the donation that we received from Kansas Farm Bureau, which pledged $5 million. And I think in that same story, and if it's not in that same story, I'll just go ahead and share that the Kansas Soybean Commission also donated $4 million, and we recognized them at a football game on the field. And these are noteworthy because, at least in the case of Farm Bureau, and I wouldn't be surprised soybeans either, these are the largest donations, single donations in these organizations' history. And that's important because it really says that those grassroots organizations really believe that what we've planned here for the renovation and new builds of these ag facilities are right in line with what they think are important to move K-State forward, to benefit agriculture moving forward. So the details are in those stories, and I hope your listeners will take a look at those.
Absolutely. And listeners, if you're interested in hearing more about these stories, reading through them, they're going to be linked in the show notes of today's program, which can be found on agtoday.net. But Dean Minton, the emphasis there on those grassroots organizations really seeing the benefit of supporting K-State's efforts because they realize the payoff is that ultimately industry is supported by students that come from K-State.
Well, that's exactly right. Not only are we using these facilities to generate new knowledge and new approaches to solving food and agriculture problems, we're also training that talent pipeline. So we think there will be tremendous benefits to K-State and the agricultural sector moving forward.
Absolutely. So, Dean Minton, another story that's really highlighted in this month statewide is sorghum researchers here at K-State recently received a $2 million grant to help modernize nitrogen use. And Peter Tomlinson is kind of leading the way on that.
Yeah, that's really exciting because this is K-State's part, and a $2 million grant, in and of itself is a significant grant to land. And so, congratulations to Peter and others at K-State who are part of that. But in total, and across all the partners, it's a $65 million national project to really advance sorghum as a climate-smart commodity. And of course, Kansas is the largest state in terms of grain sorghum production, and so it makes sense for us to be a part of that, certainly. And looking into the future, we know this crop has some advantages in terms of its water use efficiency, can go into a lot of different applications, cattle feeding, some food applications as well, or working itself into a rotation with other row crops. So we're really very, very excited about this opportunity, and really kind of it symbolizes our priority for looking at opportunities for sustainability going forward.
Absolutely excited myself to see that research play out over the next several years and then the findings that they ultimately come up with. Looking forward to hearing more about that. In terms of innovation, we've also had some students that were recently brought to K-State that were specifically taught in areas of digital agriculture. So tell us a bit about that.
Right. This is a really important area for us. It's part of one of our significant contributions to K-State's economic prosperity plan, one of 4 key pillars. We just recognize that this whole area of digital agriculture, advanced analytics, precision farming, but also it has in it a number of different, kind of disciplines as well. And so it is something that we absolutely need to be a leader in, and we've got several faculty who participate in that. This particular article has a number of, I think, video and other kinds of quotes that are embedded from Dr. Ignacio Ciampiti. He's a professor in the Department of Agronomy and really a leader in digital ag and advanced analytics. He's also a team builder and also one of our faculty who's very, very engaged, not just with industry, but also with working directly with farmers in partnership to advance applications in the state of Kansas.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, digital ag, one of those key 4 pillars that we have here at K-State that we really like to focus on. So it's great to see that playing out, especially with the involvement of maybe the next generation of researchers to come. And then I know that there's also been an initiative that's been illustrating the importance of having an advanced healthcare directive in Kansas. And I know that that's something that's been led by Ernie Yelland, I believe.
Right. Yeah, this represents an important area of emphasis, particularly for our extension folks, and that has to do with planning with the elderly. We do a number of programmatic things across the entire lifespan, and in this particular article, it's not something that we talk about regularly, but it is something that is absolutely key and important that probably every single family will deal with at one time or another, and that is making sure that as family members age, that they have really clear directives in place about how they want their near end-of-life decisions to be made, what their preferences are, and so on. And so it's a really good article from that features Ernie Yelland that really talks about this difficult part of our lives.
Absolutely. I believe that article also brings up the subject that even young adults should be considering this as well, just in case they experience something obviously traumatic, which, a young person hopes to not happen and doesn't expect to happen, but extreme events do occur, so it's good to have those plans outlined even at a young age.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You nailed it exactly. We never know when that time will come, and sometimes unexpected things, particularly accidents, obviously, leave one in a situation where family members have to make decisions that are very, very difficult. And so knowing an individual's preferences are really important in terms of taking that burden off of family members and others with responsibility to make those decisions in those particular cases.
Absolutely. A hard conversation to have, but an important one nonetheless. On to a lighter subject here. We'll end with our last subject that we're going to cover. And the onset of college football season sparked an interesting discussion between me and one of our livestock economists here at K-State, Glenn Tonzer. And it got picked up across the media pretty heavily.
Well, that's great. It is an interesting topic and one that probably makes sense. But I think, behind that represents an important area of scholarship that Glenn has been really involved with, and that is monitoring meat demand. And so this is a great article that ties that to the onset of football season and how it may have spurred the demand and uptake in the meat market. And again, this really reflects how our Department of Agricultural Economics and particular economist, extension economist Glenn Tonser is right on the front edge of that. And as you noted, a tremendous amount of interest in that particular topic.
Absolutely. Those team of economists that we have here in Ag Econ at K-State, a great group, always at the forefront of staying up to date with current events and the trends, especially when it comes to consumer trends in a time like this when inflation is through the roof and we're seeing the results of that play out. But a great team that is definitely ahead of their time in terms of what they keep up with. So, yeah, that was a great story to include this month. Glad to see that.
Right. Very timely.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so thankful for your time today, and I can't thank you enough for sharing these incredible stories with our listeners. But thank you again so much for your time.
Again, Samantha, really happy to be on with you, and I know that your listeners will find this month's edition of Statewide to be very informative. And as always, if there are follow-up things we can answer, we're always happy to do that.
Still ahead, we are going to be hearing from Ashlee Westerhold, who serves as the director of the Ag Transitions Office here at K-State. She is discussing their LandLink program and providing insight on one of the landowners' experiences with the program so far. That landowner and producer Dale Springer is also joining us, and he is so graciously providing insight on what his experience has been like so far and why he and his family have really decided to utilize the Kansas LandLink program. So stay tuned to hear more from that conversation. Also, if you are on the go and worried about missing that interview while listening on the radio, don't forget we are also available as a podcast. You can find it online at agtoday.net or on podcast apps like Apple, Spotify, and more. Simply search for Agriculture Today, Kansas. Once again, we are cutting to a short break, but we will be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are joined now by Ashlee Westerhold. She is the director of the Ag Transitions LandLink program. And this might ring a bell for some of you that are regular listeners because we've talked about it before on the show, but we wanted to cover it again. So, Ashlee, thanks for joining us to discuss this program again.
Thank you, Samantha.
We're going to actually bring in a program participant here in a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to start off with you just to introduce the LandLink program and then talk about why it's so useful.
So our LandLink program is matching land seekers, so beginning farmers and ranchers who may not have access or capital to buy out another farm or to expand their current operation or even to farm full-time. I think a lot of people are interested in farming full-time, but again, the capital that it takes to begin farming is difficult. And so the LandLink program is matching those land seekers with landowners who are interested in finding a successor. These landowners are not just trying to find hired help, but they are trying to find the new age of management. I would say that everyone in our LandLink program currently are very community-focused, and they love their farm, and they really want to share that love of their farm with that next generation, and they don't currently have that next generation coming in. So all of the people in our LandLink program are passionate about agriculture, and we're very excited to be offering this program. You can find out more information on our agtransitions.org website, and you are able to fill out applications as a land seeker and a landowner on our website.
And that can be found on agtoday.net for this show specifically. But Ashlee, like we mentioned, Dale Springer, he's a producer that is in the program currently and is on the look for someone to be his successor in the future. But tell us a little bit about Dale specifically and how you have interacted with him so far.
So Dale called my office and said he heard about our program and said, I want to fill out an application. And I was like, okay, so you can fill it out online. He was like, I don't know if I want to fill it out online. So what we actually did was we had him write out all of his answers of the application, and he mailed it back to me. Once we received his application for a landowner, we had a phone call to follow up with Dale of saying, hey, why hasn't it worked in the past? Why do you want to keep the farm together today? What does it mean to you to have another person come in to keep the farm together? And what does it mean to you for mentoring? And so after that conversation, he was like, you need to come down and see the farm. I went down, I saw the operation, and that allows me, when I receive land seeker applications, to know Dale personally, so that when I make a match, every person that I'm making a match, I know personally, and I can feel comfortable making those matches. And so a lot of my job is the communication, is building those relationships with both the landowners and the land seekers, so that when I'm making these matches, my reputation is on the line, but I feel comfortable. And so a lot of my job, again, is knowing the ins and outs of these operations and knowing the strengths that I'm looking for in the land seekers to match them with these landowners. And I'm trying to be very intentional when matching. Instead of making all the information available, we like to have private applications so that no one besides me can see them until the landowner agrees to accept a land seeker application. And then we go from there if they want to follow up with that land seeker. So that's kind of the process. And every process will be different, but I would say that is a normal process.
Sure, yeah, your description there just goes to show how deeply personal this interaction is, that producers that utilize this program, the connection they have with you and how willing you are to really work with them to meet their needs. But we're going to hear more from Dale Springer once again here shortly, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his testimony to using the program and what it's been like so far. But Ashlee, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Dale Springer. He is a producer located north of Independence. So Dale, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the Kansas LandLink program. So tell us a little bit about your background and then how you learned about the Kansas LandLink program.
Well, my background is I started farming when I was 13 years old with a little bit of cropland, and that's how I got paid for my labor on the farm. I was raised as a poor boy. My folks started with nothing and worked their way up, and my father got into the swine business back in about 1961. And honestly, I swore I'd never raise another pig in my life. I wanted to be in the dairy business. So when I was going to school at K-State, I thought I was going to be in the dairy business. And due to the fact that a local veterinarian told my dad, you come in and I want to show you something. And so we went in, and that was in the 60s. And he showed me his accounts receivable were covering up the people's names. And dairy wasn't doing very well, so I had to take a different road. I did not get to graduate from K-State because my mother had cancer. And so my wife and I got married, and I had a young brother and a sister, and we helped take care of them for 9 years. And 1980 was our first year on our own, and it was the worst drought that they'd ever had in southeast Kansas. It repeated itself in 81, but we started with 100 sows and 1,000 acres to farm. Every year we added 100 more sows up till we got to 600 sows, and they were still outside. And the third year we was on our own, people came to me and wanted to rent me 1,000 acres of cropland. It was good cropland, and it went from there to up to 3,000 acres. And a lot of the land we have purchased now was land that people had rented me, and as the generations passed away, we acquired the land. We own 3,200 acres of land now, and we lease another 800 acres on crop share, and they're all long-term leases that should go on. But I have 2 daughters, and I have 2 granddaughters. They don't have any sons. My nephew and my youngest daughter run the swine units, and what we do for it is we have a 280,000 bushel grain storage on the farm. Our grain comes into there, and it is processed and fed to the pigs, and our connection to it is producing grain for it and using the waste product through center pivots. We have 22 center pivots. I have 3 full-time employees in the crops farm along with myself. The guys on our crops farm, they are very mechanical, and they do very well with irrigation and what have you, but the agronomic part of it, the planting, is the area that they know that they need somebody in if I'm not here. And I want to see some other young person that wants to farm continue what we're doing. Our granddaughters don't want it sold. They want it kept. Our daughters don't want it sold. They want it kept. So that's the reason we're working with this program.
Absolutely. So an easy process so far with Ashlee.
very easy. She's easy to talk to. I asked her to come down and visit the farm, and so we could visit. So you get to know somebody a lot better and what they're all about. You see the good, the bad, when you sit down and spend some time with them. Where just a short interview or something, you don't see everything you need to see. She is very easy to talk to. She asks questions. She sees your strong points and she sees your bad points. And I enjoyed her being here.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person to work with. When it comes to utilizing this program specifically, Dale, you mentioned you have grandchildren and daughters that didn't want to take over it, but why specifically did you choose to utilize the LandLink program instead of maybe leasing out the land?
We have a nice line of machinery. I do not want to just sell it because of the tax implications. We'll either somebody comes in that just wants a good position and wants to keep doing that, that's all right. And I just like to see somebody take what we spent a lifetime building and go on and build on it.
In terms of what this program can do for your family, what are you hoping to get most out of it?
A family that is interested in agriculture and grows to understand what it takes to make this work. It is very complicated. And we have our own fertilizer mixing plant on the farm, and somebody has to learn how to run it all, how to make the different blends of fertilizer. It's simple to me, but I grew up doing it.
Wow, so you're really looking for someone that's open to learning the ins and outs of your operation, it sounds like. What else are you hoping for in terms of someone that will kind of come in and take over?
Someone that's a good person to work with for these guys we got here, because these guys want to stay here. The one boy that works here, he has 7 children now. So we got a good crew coming on. We just got to get them grown up. The youngest one is 3 weeks old. So
it might be a few years, yeah.
Yeah, we got a few years. His oldest daughter is 13. But I need to quit the physical work day after day.
Absolutely. Well, Dale, I'm so appreciative. I feel like we've gotten a fantastic overview over everything that your family has going on operation-wise and kind of what your hopes are. And we've been sharing that today, hopefully because someone out there is listening and hopefully looking to be a part of something exactly like this. And if they do feel that way, if a listener's tuning in, then we really, really encourage you to reach out to the Kansas LandLink program and speak with Ashlee and maybe even schedule something to where you all could meet up. But Dale, thank you so much for joining us today and really sharing so much insight on your experience with the LandLink program and what your hopes are.
Well, thank you for having us, and we'll be glad to show anybody around that wants to look.
We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. There are 3 components to successfully caring for houseplants during late fall and winter. Provide adequate light, avoid overwatering, and fertilize sparingly. K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Johnson County, Dennis Patton, explains why these 3 things are so important. Dennis, a lot of people have already started bringing their plants indoors, and as part of that, there are some things that we need to do that are different from tending to our plants outdoors.
That is correct. Yeah, most of the plants that people have in their houses are tropical house plants. You know, they come from tropical regions, rainforests, those type of things. And to them, anything probably much below 60 degrees is really kind of chilly and cold because they're warm-loving. They're going to like it more in the 70s, 80s, which is more of our typical indoor house temperatures.
One of the things I guess we're most concerned about is just making sure that there's adequate light.
Yes. Most of the house plants we grow in their native habitat tend to be what I would call understory plants, that in their natural habitat they would receive very low light. Now keep in mind, all homes compared to outdoors are going to have pretty low light. And sunlight is the driving factor. We go back to our basic photosynthesis for growth, and that is the factor that drives plants. So when it comes to house plants, I think there's a couple ways to look at how you maintain those, especially those that you bring in and out over the winter months and the summer months, as opposed to those you leave indoors all year round.
I guess one of the dangers is the fact that we often tend to overwater houseplants.
There's a couple things to consider with our houseplants. Let's go back to sunlight, for instance. For our houseplants, I think you almost can't give them too much light, because if a plant will do fine in lower light, it'll probably grow a little bit more robust in a little bit more light. I think what we want to be concerned with, if you've got a direct west or south sliding glass door, very bright light, a few houseplants could be burned by that intense light, but most of them are not going to be. Unfortunately, most of us for light in our homes, a lot of times we're using a window. The plant's set back a couple feet from the window. Sometimes there's a curtain or sheer, which all that's going to decrease the intensity of the light, which is then going to, in many cases, slow down the growth rate of the plant. So then, you ask about the question about watering. Yes, that's probably the most difficult thing to tell people about houseplants. But I'm going to guess probably more houseplants are overwatered with good intentions than underwatered in the home itself.
Fertilization is also something that we need to kind of keep a close eye on, because we really don't need as much as we might think.
That is a really good point. As I kind of mentioned with the light, our light intensities in the winter months, just because the angle of the sun, tend to be lower. Also, in the winter months, we have very short days. So plants a lot of times just exist, so to speak, during the winter months. They really don't put on a lot of growth. They're just kind of, I don't want to know if resting is the correct word, but like I said, sunlight drives growth. Lack of sunlight, the plant's not going to grow. So when it comes to fertilization, usually the recommendation and probably the best advice is stop fertilizing during the winter months. A lot of people say maybe the last fertilizer application should go on in September, and then maybe not put any more fertilizer on that plant until, those daylights start increasing there in March and April. Because fertilizer doesn't make a sick plant healthy. Fertilization only should be pushing growth when the plant really wants to grow. So we need to match the plant growth to the fertilizer applications. And here again, I think kind of like watering, I think people tend to over-fertilize houseplants because the thought is, if I fertilize more, the plant's going to grow more. But actually, if the plant's not in enough light, proper care, no matter how much fertilizer you put on, that plant's not going to grow. So you've got to take care of its basic needs first, then feed the plant.
And if people have questions, they can either contact their extension agent or go online and find some publications.
Yes, Extension has information out there to help people. In Kansas, the counties that have the dedicated horticulture agents are probably going to be your best resource, but I'm sure other agents across the state of Kansas will try to find as much information as they can to help you out.
That's K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Johnson County, Dennis Patton, with tips for successfully caring for houseplants. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.